Now, welcome back to New Realities. I'm here with my good friend Viola Rose. This is episode 3 of the series that we're doing called the Archonic Take Over the Archonic Mind Meld. How would you define Archonic presence here,
Viola? Overcoming the Archonic realities, meaning
yes,
the Archonic, meaning the template that is the control system, that is the system that is designed to keep us suffering and struggling, to feed some off-world forces or to feed something.
Well, the way I understand it is there's this force out there that's living off our emotional body, the emotionality. It's actually, Robert Monroe called it loosh. It's actually an energy that as people are dramatizing and just feeling any extreme emotion, there are entities that we are feeding with our energy. They're sucking it off of us and actually generating it at some point because of our whole idea of self-importance and what we put on the personality. Because your process has been to disconnect from all of it. Talk about your process.
Yeah.
Because
so let's see, the archonic nature of reality and what we are. What?
Keep going.
Go ahead.
No, keep going. I'm just. Yeah.
Are we still on?
Yes, we're still on.
Oh,
yeah. No, it's okay. I'm just so go ahead. So tell us what the archonic nature of reality.
Okay, so to me, like, yes, there is definitely appears to be a system that feeds off us, and the reason is because when we look at this place and how it's designed, it looks like there is a template in place to specifically cause us to suffer and struggle. This entire reality is built upon struggle and suffering. And so why would that be the case? Why would we be in a system that is constantly struggling and suffering? And so that's where the idea comes in that, well, it's created by somebody who's the architect of this realm that created it in this way. And so,
somebody or something or a group of, some people call them etheric entities, right? These archons. I think it's in the Gnostic writings that there's these beings that keep us in this kind of emotional drama. They even say the whole idea of reincarnation, you know about that. That's what Isabella Green, our last speaker, had talked about, that the whole reincarnation cycle is to generate more energy for these beings to live off of us. That's really out there for some people, but it makes so much sense when you see all the dramas, you see the wars that have been created, you see what humans call their humanity. This is their emotional life. It's all about generating that level of energy.
And the whole system seems to be built to keep us completely distracted and completely focusing on all the things of this world. And I feel like we are programmed to procreate,
right,
and to try to achieve things and whatnot that just keeps us focused here and spinning the wheels. It's like the main purpose of our existence is to breed and consume and then die and start over again, and
all to feed energy to these beings that live off our
like it.
It seems obvious to me, to us.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it seem obvious to everyone?
And it seems completely by design. When you really start to, like, the world is presented in a certain way. And if you start to question all the things that are presented, you start to see through it. You see all the holes in it that eventually
like questioning obvious.
Why does everything here eat everything else? Like, it's designed in that way. It's designed. And why is birth such painful experience and death such a painful experience? Why do these human bodies have to suffer so much? Why is pain so painful? Like, everything about this place seems designed to keep us in struggle.
So you think the pain part is also feeding energy to these archons?
Oh, for sure. Suffering, struggling, and loosh, in what we're calling loosh, a term coined by Robert Monroe, to mean just this energy that feeds whatever is in charge of the system, as if we are some sort of farm, right? And the energy generated here is what feeds something.
We're a loosh farm. Other people have said that. So
the positive energy can feed it as much as the negative energy.
Right, because it's emotionality.
It's emotionality, right? It's emotion, strong emotion. And so, there's the Taoist things and the Buddhist things that keep coming back to the neutrality. And I feel like the more I look into this, the more and more I kind of go toward that neutrality and not buying into anything.
Yeah. I want to make a distinction between emotionality and feelings. I think we're here to feel, but when you this is just my opinion. When you dwell on those feelings over and over again, they're no longer momentary, but they're things we attach to and indulge in. And it's that indulgence that feeds the Archonic matrix. So how do you stay neutral? Because you've been practicing that. You live your life with a partner and all that, but how do you stay not caught up in the dramas, the human drama, basically?
Well, I feel like for me, one of the biggest things is continuing to research this and continuing to question everything that I think, that I believe, that I take as to be real, or do I take as value, even myself, like in everything about myself, my personality, my ego, my achievements, or what I want to do. Do I think I'm here for a purpose? Do I think I'm here as a light worker to save anything? Like all of it, like I'm questioning all of it. And the more I do that, and the more I look at the full spectrum of things that actually go on here, it becomes so much more obvious that this is some sort of simulation that is designed to do that. So it helps me to not be attached to any of it and just kind of come back to none of this matters. None of this matters. And so I've just been practicing that and dismantling my life. Like, what do I think matters?
What does matter then?
I think really the only things that I can come to that actually matter is love. And being in the heart and being loving.
Well, because love is not an emotion. Some people, it's who we really are. And if we tap into who we really are instead of emotionalizing love, it's okay to feel love, of course. But when you say this love, I think it does put us out of ourselves and connect us to something bigger. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I can talk more about that.
Yeah, talk more about
because,
that.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm a facilitator for Drunvalo Melchizedek and his Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshop. And that work is all about getting out of the mind and into the heart. And so it's about that. And why? Because the mind is a dualistic tool. It is like a radio receiver. The more I pay attention to this, the more I don't trust my thoughts. My dreams just feel like broadcasts that are being broadcast into me at night. And like, I'm just not buying. I'm not getting up and remembering my dreams as if there's something special. There's just a receiver here. And so it's just part of the system.
So the whole idea, and this is what Castaneda talks about, make self-importance is part of that energy that feeds the Archonic. So you've letting go of your self-importance, your ego.
And Carlos Castaneda also says, like, they gave us their mind.
Yes.
Right. And if they gave us their mind, not trusting the mind, and the mind being in duality, being a receiver for this duality. So that is what keeps us here and focused here. And that's why meditation is so important, because it's a time that we actually unplug from the mind. And now the heart, what is that? Like, what is the heart?
What is it?
So to me, it feels like, yeah, maybe as humans, we have this center here. We focus here on it. But when I go into this space, I'm not here. I'm opening up into a field that feels like a portal that goes through beyond the matrix. So we're in some sort of simulation, some sort of construct is going on here. And what's on the other side of it? And the way to access that, to me, is through this field of a feeling and of energy that is in the heart space, but is a portal to the truth.
That's a really good point. Your heart, because it becomes not personal when you really open it up. It's not your heart, it's the universal feeling, can be this portal to transcend this Archonic mind matrix. Because look at war. War, there's no connection to that. It's this person or country fighting that. And what for? What is that for? Except it's like
by design.
Ownership. This is mine. That's not yours. And the human drama has been, I think out of 5,000 years of history, there's only been like 300 years without any wars. I think I read that statistic somewhere. So they are, whoever they are, the archons, let's call them, are instigating the dramas and the wars and the anger and all that, and then feeding off of it. So we have to stay neutral, like you said. I think that's a really good way of putting it, and just be unaffected by the world. I mean, feel it. I think feeling is a key, because I think that records our experience in the world, but not reacting. As soon as you react, you engage the emotionality that feeds the archons.
Yes.
That's my feeling
Yeah.
of that.
And I think there's also a way to be in joy and be in play that isn't feeding it.
How is that?
Like there's just this more natural, neutral space. It's not spazzy, over the top joy that's almost a bypass denial, so we don't feel the existential pangs of like, what is this place? You know, there's like this type of joy that is really a spiritual bypassing. And so
I know what you mean. We know a lot of people here.
So there's a way, I think, to just be in your center. And I think naturally there can be a joyful disposition. Carlos Castaneda would call it controlled folly.
Yes, right? He would. He also said some people engage their emotionality and feed, he doesn't say feed it, but feed what he calls the flyers, because that's who they think they are. That's all they identify with, their emotional dramas. Like most people, that person did this, I'm doing that. And so the emotionality becomes the identity, replacing what you've said is the natural self. So that's the big problem we're dealing with here.
So here's what I do. Like, how do I stay in the neutral? Is I spend a lot of my meditative time plugging into what I'm calling the source of all that is truly holy beyond this matrix. Like, I'm not connecting to God. I'm not connecting to anything that has to do with this realm. I'm trying to go through into beyond the matrix construct into what feels truth, like truly holy. And it's a stillness, and it's like a peaceful, blissful stillness.
But how do you know that's not another trap?
That's a good point.
I mean, I'm not saying it is, but I think we can tell when we're generating like drama and it's not tapped into that place. That's my feeling.
I'm suspicious of highly blissful experiences. Like, no, but a gentle sort of just calm feeling like that happens when I shut off the mind.
Right.
You know, like the radio broadcast, what's beneath it. I think it's broadcasting 24/7 because that space is also right here. It's like right here. It's right beneath. It's right.
What's that space? Describe that space.
The space of stillness that feels like there's no duality.
Right.
When I go in through my heart and I open up into this field, there's no static, there's no radio, there's no duality. And I feel like that space is always right here. And that's why the broadcast that comes in is so strong, because it's so easy to tap, really.
You know who I think talks about this, and now it's really popular these days, is the telepathy tapes. Have you heard the telepathy?
You know, I haven't listened to them myself. I just know a summary.
These are autistic, non-speaking children that are telepathic. They seem to be in that non-duality state all the time, but they can't speak about it because I think the verbal aspect of speaking creates an overlay of a false reality. It becomes a semantic reality. This is what Joseph Chilton Pearce says. You know, you call something a tree, then you look at it and say, oh, I know that's a tree, but you miss the great being that is there. I call like you or label you whatever I think you are, then you're that. It's static. And when you lay the world over with words, you miss the essence of a thing. It becomes a dead world. But if you look at it with the right brain, which is what I think more of these autistic children have activated, that makes them telepathic, the world is more alive. It's more vibrant. It's giving us messages and signals all the time. That's why I have to force myself to stop scrolling on my phone, because that just sucks me into this matrix over and over again. I'm looking at well, I think in the moment it's fantastic, but I come away totally drained and exhausted. Don't you?
Oh yeah, it's like the invitations a little bit. And I feel like the invitations are everywhere all the time, like the invitations to contract with the matrix. And they are in our face, almost like by design, where struggles with people or encounters that happen or people cutting us off. Do you want to get charged about that? Do you want to get some emotion that's going to feed the system? It's like, nope, gonna stay neutral.
You know, so many people have such an insecure ego. I'm not talking about myself. Maybe I am talking about myself, but you know, they have to prove themselves. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and it's this whole idea of what Castaneda called this self-importance. If you have this self-importance, you're going to say, no, this is my right. You can't cut me off. And you yell at the guy and you generate more of that thing. Or if you sit back in the neutrality, like you're saying, and just, okay, that person was going somewhere he needed to get to, or she needed to get to, and you just say neutral. I think that's a great way to stop feeding the archons, or what Paul Levy calls the Wetiko.
Right.
There's many names for us. I think Rudolf Steiner called it something. I mean, this is, you're right. It's occurred in history. People have understood that this force has overlaid a reality that's not real, because what's real is to be the true human being coming from love.
I have a saying that I'll say
it
is I just gonna say this when the simulation is doing something goofy or whatnot. I'll just like, simulation's gonna do what simulation's gonna do, or 3D is just gonna 3D, and I just say that as a way to just disregard, like, right and wrong don't matter. So what if someone cut me off? So what if that person scammed me out of $20? Whatever. It's just like not letting it matter, because those are invitations.
But don't you think at some time you have to stand up for yourself also? Like, you don't want everyone to rip you off. I mean, so I think there's a balance, though, like, but that comes from that love place of neutrality.
And also the controlled folly piece that Carlos Castaneda talks about, where, like, this is a game, it's a theater, and you play your role. And that actually reminds me of a quote. So maybe it's a good time to get into
this book, because Viola's been really studying this issue, and I've been doing amazing research. I think you're really at the cutting edge, and you found these great teachers of this. So
so I've been, because this is a big topic of mine and interest, because I don't feel like anything is actually more important than figuring out what this place is, so that I can know how to navigate it best now and also when I die. And so I found the work
when you die. That's interesting, because you don't want to be recycled back into the matrix. Is that why that's important?
Yeah, I think that's how this started for me, was an interest in, like, what happens when we die. And maybe 10 years ago I think George Kavasilis was the first one I heard say, like, don't go into the light, it's a trap.
Don't go in. And everyone's saying go to the light.
And so that started my interest in this, like, what, there's something to that, right? And so then I started to research, and then over the last few years it's become actually really something that a lot of people are talking about. People like Tony Sayers and Isabella Green.
We did a program with Isabella Green. What's her book called?
Leaving the Trap.
Right.
And then
that's the reincarnation trap she's talking about.
Yeah. So she's been doing a lot of great research on this, and has some techniques that you can use. And also Howdy Mikowski, who he has a book called this one is called Empty the Cave. And he has a few books that he's written. Also, Falling for Truth is a great one. And Exit the Cave was the last book that he wrote, which was really the first book on this topic. Right. So right now I'm in the middle of reading this book.
This is his latest book. He calls this book 2. Is there more?
Because there's Exit the Cave, and then Empty the Cave. And then
but I just want to ask about it. He's so radical that he says a lot of people really don't get this. Okay.
He's going far. So he's a really interesting person who had his own near-death experience that started his whole journey in this, right? And he has done a lot of work and had a lot of teachers, and is really making progress with this. And so he's writing about it because he's a writer. And he talks about that this is a reincarnation trap, and how do we, he uses the allegory of Plato's cave in his first book, and this book is taking it further. Now, this book is quite controversial because he's kind of going further than most people, I think, in the topic, in ways that a lot of people maybe don't want to hear.
Well, and I want to hear what people don't want to hear. Tell me, really, seriously.
His idea is the idea of exiting the cave or exiting the reincarnation trap. A lot of people now are trying, like, how do we get out of here? So if this is a simulation, if this is a trap, and we're in it somehow, did we get trapped here? Did we incarnate here? Like, do we come involuntarily to try to help people who are here? Who knows? But we're here, and we're feeding a system that recycles and recycles and recycles.
Because they're living off our emotion. But the big question is, okay, you don't reincarnate, where do you go? Because you're always conscious. There's always a place to be, but
well, David Icke will talk about, like, this is quoting the Nag Hammadi text, that this is a bad copy of a real reality, a true reality, and this is an inversion, that this reality has been an inversion created as a simulation and distorted to create suffering so that we feed a cycle. So anyway, we want to get out of here.
Maybe that's what the UFOs are all about, because they represent a reality that isn't of this world, but interfaces with this world. So maybe some of those ETs are trying to wake us up to that place you're talking about and get us out of the trap.
Now, maybe. And now this Alan is going to be the guy who ties the two together because he's so in the UFO field. And he's also deeply interested in this subject and researching it himself. So you are going to find the bridge in between the UFO reality and this exit reincarnation archonic reality. Like, what's the connection?
Well, I'm trying to think about it as you're saying it because I don't think if these UFOs would come out and say, you're living in a trap and you don't know you're stuck. So they're doing it
So are they a part of it?
Well, that's one thing because they are manipulating consciousness. So, but I think mostly they're here to help and get us out of the unconscious behavior. This is my favorite quote of John Mack. Do you know who John Mack was? He was a Harvard psychiatrist who started to work with experiencers and said, these people are having a real experience. They're not crazy. He wrote a book called Abductions. So he said, after looking at hundreds of cases, that UFOs are waking people up to the greater reality. And my favorite quote of his, and I say this almost on every program, John Mack said, UFOs are like an outreach program from the universe for the consciously impaired. That's us, the consciously impaired.
Sure.
Because we're being run on automatic behavior that we learn from our society to behave in these ways. Like, I want my money, my family, my relationship, my. I think George Harrison wrote a song about that.
Oh, yes. Oh, my, me, mine.
That's what he was talking about. So I think the archons having this discussion may wake people up, like you say, to the greater reality where we really can live at that neutrality and peace and joy. So what does Howdy say?
Okay, so what he's getting into in this book is about how a lot of people in this community now are talking about how do we leave? How do we get out of the simulation? And what Howdy's saying is we don't get out. Not we, who we think we are.
Right, not the ego.
Yes, the ego, the personality, anything that is part of the simulation doesn't leave the simulation.
Well, that makes sense. The ego is feeding the archons, who you think you are, your history, your identity, your family, all that attachments are archonic louche energy. So anytime you call yourself something and fight for that identity, like don't go to Cincinnati and don't, be against the Reds, it's like people are attached to their belief system, to their political party, to their religion, to their baseball team. So you can't insult any of that because people take that as a personal affront because they've identified their ego personality with a thing. And what you're saying is we're not any of those things.
We're none of those things. And so to get out of the simulation or to get out of the thing, it's not even to exit. It's not to find a way out or a technique out or something that you can do to get out as if there's an in and an out. It is about dissolving all of the aspects of self that are part of this matrix. So all that's left is the true essence being that you are.
Isn't this what Zen, Buddhism, all that?
At the core, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. And so people are trying to find ways to leave, but still to think that they're going to leave. The sense of like, I'm Viola and I'm going to find a way to exit this reincarnation cycle. And then I will be on the other side. Well, nothing that thinks it's Viola with the mind gets to do that. And so it's about stripping everything and it's doing the real work. It's not just, I'm going to recite a certain mantra at death, and then I'll be free of it. It's like, no, we actually have to dismantle all the attachment to the things and get to a place where we are playing this like it's a game and knowing it's a game.
But don't people, when they cross over, realize they're not their identity and they are detached and they realize they're this oneness, but yet they choose to come back?
I think that there's layers.
Okay.
I think that we have, I think who defined it this way? Maybe David Icke, that we have the ego, the personality self, and then we have a soul. But the soul is actually part of the astral. And so it's actually still part of the matrix. And then we have a spirit, and it is the spirit that is free. And that is the part that I was talking about connecting to when I'm talking about the parts that are truly wholly beyond all matrix constructs. And so when people die and they go into the self, they're still in the astral, and they may be connecting to their soul, their astral self. And that's still part of it.
But when you're the spirit, are you still connected to an identity of sorts? Oh, that was Viola or this person. I mean, so the spirit it's like the drop dissolving into the ocean, right? Because we're drops here of this great.
Do we still have some sort of individual
Do
self?
we?
I don't know.
I don't know
that
either.
might be like the hard drive that we have here
Mm.
might not be able to compute that, you know. They gave us a limited mind.
Right. But maybe, right. I think you're saying something like we are not capable with the limited ego mind to understand that infinite nature. Maybe you're saying that. So,
but there is consciousness, right? There is a consciousness field.
Yes.
And consciousness isn't necessarily even localized.
Oh,
like,
no. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not necessarily in my mind.
It definitely isn't.
You know, because lots of things have consciousness. And so,
well, when I teach remote viewing, I say, you know, consciousness is like the announcer's not in the radio. The person is not in your cell phone.
Yes, right.
It's the signal is coming from someplace else. So our minds are non-local. Consciousness is non-local. So there's a way through the Archonic matrix, maybe by realizing we're non-local somehow. I think we're just all trying to figure this out. Okay.
Yes, we are. And that's what these conversations are for.
And I'm so happy you're researching it.
Yeah, yeah. This is what friends are for.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to just read a couple things out of this book.
Yes,
just as topics to have conversations about.
Yes. I'm going to close up on you.
This is from page 89.
Okay.
So is exiting the cave really what you want? Because nothing of the you that currently believes yourself to be is going to make it. Awareness will make it, but not you. That is where all this is going, and is why once grace starts to get close and push against all the areas that someone is grasping to, things begin to feel uncomfortable. It is at this point the average person finds anything that will make all the tension and pressure stop. Again, they think this is scary to see that the body mind they have identified with their entire life is just a projected actor. It has a function and a focus, and we learn to navigate with it rather than against it. We appreciate the character, we root for him or her, we get the best our character can attain, but after a full realization of emptiness, we no longer classify ourselves as the thing we see in the mirror. We know we are vast, and at the same time, no thing.
Right, but
So
that's not new in a way. That's like Zen practice. I mean,
it is.
So he's saying though something a little more, because if you're a Buddhist, you identify with being a Buddhist, I think, and it's about letting it all go somehow.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I'll read a couple more quotes, and then we can discuss.
Yes.
First, you learn to awaken in the dream, to operate differently than one's conditioning in a way that is beneficial to your character. That's a cool definition. Awaken in the dream, to operate differently than we are conditioned to.
But that's beneficial to one's character. You're still identifying as the character, though.
To operate differently than one's conditioning in a way that is beneficial to your character. Because, you know, you still want to behave well and take care of this, character.
Right.
Secondly, you awaken from the dream to see that the world is not the solid reality that you believed it was. And then thirdly, you awaken from yourself, the realization of emptiness. This third realization can be both clarifying as much as it is confusing. I
wonder if Howdy actually had that kind of experience, or he's just reaching for it. It'd be interesting to talk to him.
Yeah, he's had a couple experiences. He had the near-death experience, and then he definitely has had some experiences of different levels of awakening, but he is definitely humble and knows he's still on the path and figuring it out. Okay, got two more quotes to read.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in all this.
Okay, you have to ask yourself if the process of exiting the cave is something that you are doing seriously, or is it a type of entertainment or distraction? You need to make that determination to know where the path you are walking is heading. If it is a distraction and entertainment, that is fine. Many are seekers, not for truth. They seek just to seek. You know them. They run from guru to guru, book to book, technique to technique. Always something new, the next best thing, the thing that will finally answer it all, until 3 weeks later, when all of a sudden it is something or someone else now with all the answers. They never really want to find anything. They are just seeking to give themselves something to do. Exiting the cave is not something to do. It becomes the only thing to do.
But I have to confess that maybe it is entertainment for me, because on some level, I think I already know it's an illusion. I know I have a sense that it is a game. So
well, then that leads a little bit more closer to that controlled folly that we were talking about.
yeah,
right. When you know it's a game, you know it's a theater, you're
Mhm.
just playing your character, but without attachment and
Right.
having a fun on the ride. Like Bill
Right.
Hicks says, it's just a ride. Enjoy
Right.
the ride. Then it can be entertainment.
Right. And I am enjoying the ride. And maybe there's a little, I'm sure there's ego here. I get offended if somebody says something about me. So it's like then the control folly is no longer folly. Then I take it seriously. But so we're all working through those little pieces. But I think what we're saying here and what Howdy is trying
It's a good point he's bringing up there.
Which is the good point?
The point about like, is it really a subject or is it just the next distraction?
Well,
and that's for people who are already really into this. You're researching this, but is it just a hobby? And are we slightly slanted? I think
it is slightly slanted, and we don't want to have too much of the background. Otherwise, we're revealing the cave we're in. But
so
okay, yes,
all right,
there it is. Thank you for noticing the slant here. There. Oh, here, come a little closer to me this way. There we go. Okay, good. So I think these are really good points.
Yeah, this is interesting to talk about.
And getting back to like the next latest guru fad or the next like electronic healing device or the next, magic potion people are taking. It's entertaining and it may help, but it's a distraction from, I think, going back to what you're talking about, the neutrality of
or from doing the real work. And
what is the real work?
Well, it's like, for sure, this topic is trending right now. Exiting the reincarnation cycle. It's amazing how many people are talking about it now.
Right.
That's a good sign. But I'm sure for a lot of people, it is just the next distraction. Let's research this. Let's look at it. The real work at hand is face the existential reality.
Which is
possibly that we are in a really dark system, and like the non-commodity texts talk about, like the God that created this realm is not a benevolent God. Look, just look into it. Like what it says in the Old Testament, like jealous God and sacrifices, and like there's a demiurge, there is a dark entity that created this, and to face that reality. And if the point of our existence is just to be food for something, that is that existential horror, really, to face the existential like reality of like what's actually going on here, and does my ego or personality really matter at all? If not, then in coming to peace with that.
I think you're dramatizing a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm just feeding. No, I'm not criticizing, but you're right about all that. And I don't think it's of course there's awful suffering stuff.
Just to touch it, to face it.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get to the real peace of being that existential stuff keeps us spending our whole life running from.
I know what you're saying, but I also am choosing to enjoy it.
Yes.
And to have fun, because
but you're also looking at it. So it's not, you're not in denial of it.
No, it's here and there's suffering. And I think maybe I remember my last lifetime too much in the concentration camps, where it doesn't get any darker or lower or more awful than that. That's a real memory, whether I've made it up or not. And then to come back and have like, well, right now we're living in paradise, wouldn't you say that? Right here,
pretty much in Sedona, man. It's darn good here.
It is. So you can bring all that stuff in, all the stuff, and you're right. We have to look at it, but we're also can be on the other side and say, wow, this is a beautiful planet, and there's some very kind, loving people here, and there's a great community that really is giving to each other. So
I think that's absolutely where we have to go, because if we just focus on the dark stuff, then we will fall into a pit of despair. But I think that to truly,
which feeds them.
Yes. And so, but to not be in spiritual bypassing is like just love and light. Like it's all love and light. Just focus on love and light. There's value to that, but only after you've looked at it all. You have to look at it all first to be full spectrum and to not be bypassing and be in denial. So you have to touch those realms to truly be a full spectrum being, looking clearly at reality and not going into dissonance before you can truly rest in, let's just have a good time here and be in bliss and be in the heart.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because you're right. We cannot ignore the awful conditions are in this world.
The majority of people are starving on this planet and suffering, even though we've got it good here in paradise.
And children being sold, and
real dark stuff.
People being killed over weapons or drugs, drugs itself is feeding those archonic
Yeah.
realities.
I
Or
will say that for myself, just to add this
yes,
in.
okay.
In 2016, I decided to really look into the darkness and all the stuff that was happening with the children, with the child trafficking, with the all the really, really dark stuff.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And I looked all the way into it because somehow I knew that I needed to know just to be a person who could hold it and acclimate. And it took me over 6 months of a deep depression to acclimate, to accept the reality as it is.
Okay, so you accepted it and got out of the depression. I mean, accepted that it exists. Is that how you accept it?
I mean, and then it was just like, then it was existential ping ponging for a few years. But now I'm at a point where I can accept this reality as it is, the darkness and what's actually going on here. And I choose to be in joy anyway. I actually have a little mantra written by my light switch in my bedroom. So every morning I see the mantra I see is be in joy anyway.
Right.
And so it's like to choose to be in joy regardless of what's going on here, and be light and be playful and be happy. But like that is authentic because I'm not doing it out of denial. And so there is something about just touching and not being shy to look at
or sucked up by it, or being getting into a position. Like you can be angry about all the awful things going on, or you can be neutral and still do something about it.
The simulation's going to do what the simulation's going to do.
But we can also make a difference without engaging in the emotionality, because if people are suffering, we're suffering on some level, right? Because we're all collective.
Right. So before you asked me, so what really matters here? And I said that, love matters. And the second thing I was going to share was to help alleviate suffering. Those, all I can come up with, those two things are the things that actually really matter. Even if the suffering is just what this cycle is, if we can help those around us to just alleviate a little bit of suffering and help elevate, then I think that's a worthy endeavor.
Right. No, and I think part of what is alleviating the suffering is showing them how they're trapped by their indulgence in emotionality and their identity and their, egoic labels like I am. Anytime you put something after I am, you're labeling yourself and limiting yourself. Just the I am is the neutrality. So no, I think you have a really good sense. I'm happy to talk to you here. No, because I think you're a pretty joyful person, and you also are trying to make a difference. So how do you if you see suffering, what do you do?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that one's a tough one. Yeah, I know exactly what still when do I help and when do I let it just be?
Right.
And I have examples in my life that the matrix sort of keeps presenting to me, right? Like, oh, are you going to help in this situation, or are you going to let it be? And like there's a story of a Taoist monk who, like, in him, the master and then the disciple, and they're walking down the path and there's like a suffering animal on the side, and then they just walk past, and then the student asks the master, why didn't you help and stop and help that dying animal? He's and carry it with us, and he's like, you're still carrying that. I've let it go. Like there's that level of detachment where you just don't care. And
it's about caring, or just, I mean, I think there's a way of caring where you're sucked into the matrix, and the way of caring where you're sending love. And
I think the term I've come to is detached compassion. You just be helpful, you just be loving, but without attachment, and just help where you can. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But also don't give too much life force energy, because as soon as that's done, the matrix is going to throw another opportunity at us to get caught up in the struggle. I have one last paragraph I want to read here that will tie this up.
This is Howdy Mikowski.
Empty the Cave. Page 94. A reminder is required here that we are not following this path to escape suffering and pain. We are doing it to find out what is true about ourselves and our reality. If suffering and pain leave, well, that's a bonus. The main goal is not to end suffering, as suffering likely will still take place here in the matrix, as it is part of the entire basis of distortion this realm is built on. What we are doing is ending the cycle of suffering for the deeper awareness that you are. We're ending the reincarnation cycle. That, I think, is key. Like to not continuously trying to end suffering, because then we'll just spin forever, because this realm is designed for suffering.
Unless we go to this next level of mind. Like one of my favorite quotes by Mark Twain is, most of the problems I had in my life never happened. It was a total projection of what might go wrong, this or that. So and that's another way of feeding the matrix. So I think suffering, as Buddha said, is the attachment. And ending suffering, I think people have a choice. Do they want to stay attached to the old relationship, to this, to what if, and or be in the neutrality, which I really like because it doesn't have any like religious overtones, just the neutrality of sense, and then have you end the suffering, Viola? That's my question to you.
Yeah, I think as long as we are trying to end the suffering externally,
you're suffering.
then we're not focused on ending the suffering internally. And the way to end the suffering is to end it internally, because then we are free of the struggle, and then we can be a presence of peace in this realm. And that's really all we can do. But to try to get caught up in ending the suffering externally is still, I think, a hook.
It is. But have you personally, I mean, if you want to talk, have you ended the suffering?
I'm ending the suffering. I am definitely in the process.
What are you still suffering about? You seem pretty unsufferable.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
I'm not in too much struggle about much of anything.
All right. But I mean, you don't have to tell us, but is there something that I'm curious because you're working on it?
Yeah. So what do I do? What I do is I go on long barefoot walks every day, and I open up to the field and I work through this stuff, and I meditate and I contemplate this, and I meditate deeply in the heart space and let that field fill me so that I'm filled with that, and then bounce it off this world. So I just doing a process of research, and externally and internally, to get to the place where I'm not attached to whatever this world is throwing at me.
Yeah.
And it's a process, and I'm still in it, right? Like,
what does the world throw at you that might rattle your neutrality?
See. Okay, here's an idea.
Okay.
Here's not an idea, an experience I had.
Okay.
I'm walking down the street and I hear a puppy yelping and crying. And then as I approach closer, I see a woman beating her dog. Literally a puppy. She's pounding it. Wow. And what did I do? I started to scream, "Hey, stop beating that puppy. Yeah. Stop. Like, you're hurting that puppy." And then that woman turned as if she was almost demonically possessed and turned all her rage on me and said, started swearing at me, like, leave me alone, leave me alone. Like, you don't know anything about it. And I was just like, that's animal abuse. You're hurting that puppy. Like, I was so that. And then it turned out to be this whole thing. She called the cops. There was this whole drama that happened of it. And I meditated on that for like a month. And I realized I was spinning on it. I was feeding the loot. How could I have done it differently? What should I have done differently? And it sucked my life force and energy for a few weeks.
But I think you did the right thing, because
I did it, but I could have done it from a more detached
How
place.
could you have
I
done
was
it?
charged. It came to me. And this was 2 years ago. So and I have grown since then, but I learned a lot from that.
But what could you have done? This woman's doing
I could have stopped, gotten presents, and not gotten like, like, oh no, like animals, like that's that's my worst thing. Like I as a vegan, just won't participate in the suffering of animals because they're beautiful beings. And so that was going to hook me more than anything, right? And so I could have gotten, I think, more detached in my heart and said, "Hi, can I help you? How can I help you in this situation right now?" Instead of yelling, "Hey, stop, that's animal abuse." It rose her. I got an invitation to contract, and I took the bait. There was a different way to do it. And now, after that experience and a few others, I'm much more neutral.
But you know what? Loose feeding is catchy. It's contagious, because someone's angry and they come at you with anger, you get angry or reactive, and it just perpetuates. So
it's like a hot potato.
So stepping into that neutrality takes a lot of work, and it's not easy, because we're bred to be reactive in situations, because we have a right to stand up for what we think is true, and you did. Yes. So that's another aspect of the matrix thing. It triggers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so another thing that has helped me a lot is realizing that because it's designed here to create struggle and suffering, as long as we keep trying to fix it, then we are also not in a neutral place. If I just go, "Hey, the matrix is going to do what the matrix is going to do. The simulation is going to simulation on us." Like it's nothing's wrong if the system doesn't look like it's broken, which the whole world system and the governments and all the things looks like it's broken and everyone's trying to fix it. It's that way by design.
Right.
I don't know if it will ever be different. It's a simulation built on a program.
Maybe it's not broken. No, maybe that's just how it is.
It's by this way by design. So if I know that, then I don't get caught up in trying to fix it or getting emotionally upset when things look like they're going wrong.
But is there another way, with all the brokenness that you're claiming? I mean, as you're saying out there, and it is in some, that it's just being at peace with what is.
Yeah, tell us about how you go about it.
Well, I'm like saying, the sun is shining, the wind is blowing, the trees are green.
Beautiful.
And in this moment, getting back to the moment, things feel pretty good. I mean, yes, there's awful suffering. I would have been upset too if I saw that woman. And people, yell at me or engage me, and it triggers me. But I try to come back to that place where, wow, I'm drinking a glass of water, and the desert is beautiful, and the sun is. I try to get back to that place. So I'm not always there,
right?
But
the be enjoy anyway.
Yeah, be enjoy after you engage the matrix. And then go back to that place.
Yeah, just keep returning. And if we call it the heart.
Yes.
Returning to the heart, or to that neutrality.
Right. So anyway, I recommend this book by Hattie Mikhailsky.
Yeah, me too. I'm still in the middle of it, but I'm really, really getting a lot out of it.
And what other books would you recommend? Because I've researched this. Yeah, there's the Paul Levy, Watiko books, Isabella Green. What is that name of her book?
She's got Leaving the Trap and Beyond the Trap. And those are great. They're really great books.
Yeah. Right. But what I learned here from you, from this discussion, it's a practice. It is a daily practice.
Yes. And this seems like there's nothing more important to practice than the sacred neutral. Like to find the sacred neutral, just like, what seems more worthy? The sacred neutral. I mean, at first I said, "Oh, sacred. Why are you calling it that?" Yeah, I don't know.
No. But I think it's good because the sacred neutral is the sense of this bigger self.
Yes. If we just say neutral, it can almost imply a void of blandness or nothing.
Right.
But to hold on to the sovereignty, the whole, like the sense of benevolence, the joy in the heart, that implies a little more sacredness to me.
No, I like it.
That could be a charged word.
No, it could be, but I think you're right about the sacredness is that place of neutrality where you can look at the game here and not judge it as broken or unbroken or indulge. It just is what it is. That's the world as it is.
Yes.
And there's suffering, but we can just preach in a sense that people don't have to, so it's like sort of like that, right? I mean, they can choose that, or we can give them options for something else. Maybe.
Depends on maybe people can choose it. Depends on what people are at within the construct. There's people who are in deep suffering and whatnot, but we have the luxury of choosing it for whatever reason. Like, I think to get to this point where you're assessing the situation as it is and being able to choose out of it is something to inspire and to invite others into. So like you're saying, we can invite that.
Well, let's do more on this.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've given a nice sense of what's possible, and maybe get Howdy. I know he doesn't want to come on do shows because he's been attacked, you said. But
I think that he's just a little reluctant because his information is on the far end of the spectrum of this field, and it's a lot of people don't really want to annihilate the self that completely.
I think it's important that at least someone's saying that's what should be done.
Yes,
because people are so caught up in the self as a thing that they have to defend or fight or argue for. And I think when you're not caught up in the self, you can be more compassionate, first of all. You can help more. You can alleviate suffering more because you're not defending who you are. That's my sense.
Nice.
Thanks, Viola. How do people find you and everything you do?
My website is violarose.com.
Right.
And so I do Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshops to learn how to get out of the mind and into the heart, and do sound healing and things like that. So
thanks. I really enjoy these conversations because you're making me think about what I can do personally. I mean, it is all about this personal vehicle in the world, each of us.
Yeah. And we've got to have conversations like this because we each researchers, we're all like digesting all this information, but then to bounce it off each other and expand our horizons and create new realities, just like your show is called.
So leave a comment in the chat and subscribe and listen for more of these programs. I'm curious what people think.
Oh, and you can also find my YouTube channel is Viola Rose.
Right.